Oh, absolutely. Let's put the chair here so I won't be able to stay long. I do have another engagement, but I just wanted to come by.
All right, you ready?
Yes, great to have
It's
you.
on?
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, my name is William Palmer, and I am the editor-in-chief of the San Francisco Bayview National Paper. And I'd like to thank...
That's a black newspaper.
And I'd like to thank Willie Radcliffe and Mary Radcliffe for starting the Willie Radcliffe Fellowship that allowed me to become the editor-in-chief.
And I'm Mano Raju, the elected public defender of San Francisco. I'm honored to have the endorsement of the Bayview National Black newspaper, and really looking forward to this conversation with William, and giving people the opportunity to know my platform.
Yes, and so we are stewards of the community. Hey, the lights, so let there be lights. We are the stewards of the community, so we invited our community here for this town hall business meeting, and later on they'll ask a few questions. But first, I know Mano for a long time, and I've supported him for a long time, and we've been supporters of each other. He is the only elected California public defender in the state of California, the only elected public defender for the state of California. So he doesn't have to answer to no one but us. So he does his job in a way that no other public defender does. And we appreciate that. And in this city, unfortunately, the law enforcement gets the bulk of the free money. When I mean free money, they don't have to fundraise. They don't have to ask for grants. They don't have to do all the hard work that nonprofits and other agencies have to do in order to serve the people. And unfortunately, their accountability has been less than acceptable. And so we want to know how we can make sure that we fund a public defender's office that is doing the work of the public, like they really defend the public. And the district attorney says she represents the people, but I think the public defender represents the people.
Absolutely.
And in that, I would like him to explain some of his work before he came to be the public defender of San Francisco, and how he actually did represent many of our brothers and sisters who were finding themselves on the wrong end of the law enforcement.
Sure. In order to tell that story, I want to talk a little bit about my origin story. There's a lot of threads that led to me becoming a public defender. But I want to start with my ancestors and my parents in particular. My parents grew up in a farming village in South India. No one in my family had been to high school before. There was no running water, but there was a village elder who saw my father, and he used to sit in the corner, put cotton in his ears and study. And he told my father's father, you should actually let him, and mother, you should let him pursue further education and leave the village. And to me, because someone really saw him, that enabled my father to achieve his full potential, eventually emigrate to this country along with my mother. And I feel like as public defenders, the most important thing we do is to truly see our clients and see them fully. And if you see someone fully, in my mind, you have no obligation other than to fight for them, and do everything you can in order to represent them. So I've been obsessed with how do we represent our community at the highest level, particularly people of color, particularly our Black community, because, as was made known with the book, The New Jim Crow, our system has been an extension from slavery through Jim Crow and now what's going on in the system. And that's why we have to raise the level of defense we do to the highest level. And so when I think of the triangle of public defense, we are warriors, but we're also facilitators. We want our class to get to a better place as a result of our representation. And we're also systems change agents. So we're sort of always pivoting around that triangle. How do we defend at the highest level? How do we be facilitators to help our clients get to whatever is going to help them thrive, whether that's a class at City College or a labor apprenticeship program or substance abuse counseling or dancing. We have Asia running a class downstairs right now. Whatever that is, and then systems change work. So there's been a number of, I personally take a lot of pride in the way I've defended people in the Bayview in particular. There are people from Sunnydale, from Harbor, from Oakdale, Osceola, that because of the representation that me and my team were able to provide. And just on that level, one thing I want to talk about in particular is just the importance of being a community-centered lawyer. Like, I believe we need to leave no stone unturned in our investigation, follow every single motion, prepare for trial in the best way, but also we need to be in the community. So we've made it a requirement for our attorneys in felony cases that you have to reach out to a family member within the first 7 days of representation. Because when you actually connected with a family member, you're so much, you just know your client in a different way, right? And all of us are members of, however that person defines family, you know. Because the reality is the impact on it, it's going to affect our representation, that person's family and their ecosystem, and potentially the subsequent generation. So I think we're fam-centered attorneys, not just fam-centered defenders, not just client-centered. And that's, to me, is vital. And I'll talk about community experts in a second, but I want to talk about some of our initiatives too. We, you know, in this moment of mass incarceration, mass detention, the Breonna Taylor, George Floyd moment, it's important that we be warriors in the courtroom, but we have to do so much more. So we have been active in Sacramento in shortening probation terms to make it a cap of 2 years and 1 year for some misdemeanors. Doesn't mean we can't bargain for less, but let's put a cap on it so prosecutors don't say, plead guilty and go home out of jail and be on probation for 6 years, which can be very tempting if you're in, right? We've been active on the, to try to modify the gang statute to make it less abusive on our clients. We have started an End the Cycle program, boots on the ground case managers to connect people with services. We tripled the capacity of our Clean Slate program. I reached out to foundations because that's so important. If someone's on probation, it's difficult to access the employment, educational, housing opportunities. So we're getting records expunged and we're going out to the community to do that, not waiting for people to come to our office. We have launched the first public police misconduct database in the country, connected to a public defender's office. And by the way, this is all during a pandemic. We've been doing this just in the last 2 to 3 years. We have started the Youth Defender program, which is a paid high school internship program for young people, public high school students, to get exposed to social worker, investigator, paralegal, attorney, IT positions, all the work that we do in our office. We started the Freedom Project because there's been some changes in the law in Sacramento, but if you don't have a defender pushing it, the change never reaches the intended beneficiaries, right? So now we brought in dozens of people. As I approached the mayor when there was a change in the law, one in particular about felony murder, is that, you know, prosecutors aren't going to jump and start going through their cases. We need to be doing that and providing them with that material. So we've been able to bring home dozens of people who were improperly convicted, or if the judge now has discretion to strike the priors, now that's happening more. So a lot of people are coming home. We also started something called the Adachi Project. You can go to wearedefender.com because we know we have to make movies and tell the stories in order to move policy. We started a Be the Jury program. Previously, you would be financially hardship off of a jury. If you had a financial hardship, the judge would just say, okay, you can go home now. Now, we reach out to the treasurer and we're paying jurors $100 a day who would otherwise financially hardship off. And that has greatly increased the economic and racial diversity of the jury in San Francisco, where there were 3 African-American men on that jury. That hasn't happened in San Francisco in a long time. And then we actually sued ICE because of the horrendous conditions in ICE detention that our immigrant community was suffering under. And we were able to get a lot of our community members home. So we've had a lot of accomplishments, and when I think of public defense, I guess there were warriors, activists, and we're counselors and facilitators, and I just want to keep on pushing it, angle of that triangle, you know, as hard as I can, and as skillfully and as relationally as I can.
He deserves a raise. I just want to thank Mayor Running Green. He deserves a raise wherever he pays his salary. I want my tax money to go. So many people know my story. You know my story. You asked me to come on the Adachi Project to help tell stories. I was a story of a 17-year-old who made a bad decision in a desperate situation, and Riverside County decided to throw me away, give me a life sentence. They didn't care if I was rehabilitative or amendable, as they said. Even YA said, hey, we can help this guy, and they was like, we're not concerned with that. We just want to know, can you house him until he's old enough to be with adults? this case, adult men. And here we have District Attorney. But here we have a district attorney who is dusting off a policy to convict juveniles, our children. Juveniles are children, they're not adults. And yet she wants to dust off a policy that we put to bed under Chelsea to prosecute our children as adults. And I think that's a no-starter for us. I think that's going back into a more pro-white supremacist structure of punishment. And I like to even bring up the biblical story of when they wanted to make sure Jesus wasn't born, what did they do? They went and killed every child in that age group that could possibly be the Messiah. And so I see that in parallel. When we're looking at our community and hoping that we have a king rising up out of our community to make sure that we're led, what is the best way to prevent that? Lock up as many of them as possible to make sure that their seed doesn't even grow, and if it does, they're behind bars without a role model as a man, right? And so we find the ripple effect now in our communities, but now they're coming home. Because of SB 260 and the Henry Palmer law, many of those youth offenders got out and are coming home to repair the damage that they participated in. So tell us about the juvenile issues or the juvenile programs that you, as a public defender, want to help San Francisco with.
Sure, and thank you so much for sharing that story, William. And William, from the first time I met him, he's been inspiring me. So, and I'm really so thrilled to see you in this new position. But, I actually did the jury trial for the last young person who was filed into the court in San Francisco prior to the Chesapeake administration. And, the reality is, it broke my heart every day to go see him in an adult jail. I mean, they should not have been treating a kid that way. Fortunately, we did all the work we needed to do. We brought in community experts. We brought in the character witnesses. We broke down the video. We were able to actually secure an acquittal. So the client came home in that case. But, the reality is instead of prosecuting young people as adults, what we should be doing is expanding the range of what's considered a juvenile offense, right? We should be actually raising the age because there's so much more increasing awareness of the brain and its development, how it's not fully formed until the early 20s. So instead of moving in this, we should be, matching the science and moving in the other direction. But what we try to do, and I'm going to put this on the top, like the counselor, facilitator part of the tribe problem, is we have these youth empowerment programs that a lot of people aren't aware of. Those are our magic programs, Be Magic and Mo Magic. Bayview Magic and the Bayview, Mo Magic and Fillmore. And these are, and if you go and see our staff, they're so good at just connecting with youth. Because there's education and then there's youth empowerment. What is that thing that's going to spark that individual? And we have free programming in the summer, keeping a lot of young people out of the system. We also started this End the Cycle program that I was talking about to connect our youth with those services, could actually move them in a more positive direction. And we're also in the process of shutting down juvenile hall. So we're really trying to get to the place where we take a different approach to, I don't like to call it our juvenile unit anymore because I think it's stigmatizing our youth defender unit. Where we really try to get in there, provide the highest level of representation. Because people don't realize in juvenile court, you don't have a right to a jury trial. And that makes it even more, the impact on that, because you can't go to 12 people, you're stuck with a judge. And a lot of judges, I'll take a jury every day over a judge. They're going to have that pressure. We want 12 people, and our young people don't have the right to a jury trial. That's why it's even more offensive to be, to get those kind of convictions or strikes on young people because they don't have the right to have a jury making that decision on their cases.
Exactly. And I don't think anybody believes that a child is born to be in a criminal situation. And so there's something that broke down in the village or the community that allowed that process to happen. So if anybody should be on trial for that child, it should be the community and those agencies and those institutions that were built to push that juvenile from school to prison. Mm-hmm. And those people should be on trial, not the juvenile or not the youth offender, right? And so I love what you're doing. I think everybody who's hearing what you're doing is amazed because on the prosecution side, they're doing nothing like this, right? But yet they have no problem prosecuting our people. Talk about your community expert, like bringing people in to really speak to a system that was designed to do nothing but harm to black and brown people, but speak about the community.
Sure. You know, oftentimes in San Francisco, and in part because of the large wealth disparity, you have juries show up who have no idea, you know, some of the conditions that our clients are living in. I mean, the distance between someone who just came into the city, maybe they're working in tech, you know, and like being up on the hill in the Bayview, that might as well be my parents' village in India. You know, even though this is a small city, it's only 7 by 7. There's a lot of things that are just not understood. And in San Francisco, they have a very well-oiled gang task force where they're keeping book on our black and brown youth. And they're literally, they have something called FI cards, and they're literally documenting every time they see them, who they're with. Doesn't matter if you're in the parking lot here and someone else is here, you go in two different directions, they'll put a card down so they were with each other. Because you're trying to show affiliation. And they're trying to eventually use that, basically punish someone because of where they live. And what we're finding is they're taking the different areas, and if you live there or if you're associated with someone, they were calling them either a gang member or a gang associate. And I remember being in a trial, and they literally, we just named everyone. We named every single, we just wrote down the list. They had more people than even lived in the neighborhood, which meant they were pretty much anyone who was there who was coming through, they were labeled as a gang member or associate. And I used to have a pickup basketball game at Balboa High School, and there was one of the players there he worked in empowerment, he was bringing young people from the Bayview to the games. And what he said is, these are not gangs. Like, they're groups, but they're not gangs. And I said, I need you to come to court and say that. So I brought him, I had him come to court, and I qualified as a youth empowerment community expert. And the judge said, well, he's not a gang expert. And I said, well, my client's not a gang member. So my client's a community member. So I'll call my community expert. They can call their gang expert, and we'll let the jury decide. And that threw a while for him, and he hadn't heard that before. But finally I said, okay, when I showed him the evidence code, I said, you have to let him testify. And what I found was jurors were absolutely starving for this information. Someone who could explain navigation strategies, someone who could explain, listen, you got this tattoo, but that doesn't, and maybe you may throw up a symbol from time to time for the camera or to fit in, but that's very different than someone who is under the statute, an actual affiliated, you know, statutory gang member. And when you actually break down the statute, most people that they would put in that category are clearly not, but they're trying to make up, the prosecutor's trying to make up for a lack of evidence with fear. And they figure if we don't have the case, but we can throw a bunch of fear in there, the jury will convict. And that has happened time and time and time again. So I decided I wanted to challenge whether this is a gang to begin with, let alone whether my client's a member of it. And so in bringing in these community experts and breaking that down, the jurors were very receptive to it. And now we've started calling community experts on all sorts of other reasons. For example, why wasn't this individual called properly with the police? Well, there's a history of distrust. That doesn't mean they're lying. That just doesn't mean this is going to get them anywhere. They don't want their name on paperwork. There could be a whole lot of dynamics. But if you're not from that neighborhood, you might say, why don't you just tell the police everything you knew? So bringing in experts just explains some of those dynamics and some of those cultural, sociological, geographic dynamics to a jury. And once the community expert got qualified as an expert once, then you go to the other judge and say, well, that judge let it in. So now you have to let him or her or them in this other case. So now we've started developing that as a practice here. And I encourage staff members to go into the community and start working on your case in community, because the experts are all around. If you actually will go into a community and talk to them. And sometimes I'll have someone from Fresno or from call me and say, you got a community expert. And I say, no, you obviously didn't hear the lecture. You have to go to your community in your center. I'm not going to give you, I have a lot of people I know, but you have to go to your community, call the expert, and the people will be there and start doing that. And that will be impactful. Jurors actually do want to hear that. Because I find if you do the right job in the initial part of the jury selection, jurors actually more often than not will try to get to the right answer, but you have to bring them the material so that they can do that.
I guess my phone must have been busy because I'm an expert. You ain't been calling.
Oh, yeah, you're an expert.
Talking about that, if we ask you, because nobody's perfect, and we don't want to sit up here and sell the community like this is an angel, he's not going to make any mistakes, and I'm always for second chances, especially when the intention is good. what mistakes have you made as a public defender, and what would you do different?
That's a good question. I think, first of all, I have a growth mindset. So any trial I do, I'm always going to go back at it and look at it more carefully and do a self-diagnosis and try to do that. Is there a way I could phrase this question differently? Either in the jury selection part or closing argument, some piece like that. So I think it's always, especially in court trial work, it's like you can constantly get better. It's an art and it's a little bit of a science, but you have to constantly work on that. So I would say there's a lot of pieces in any trial that I would always, even if it was a not guilty, which I've gotten a lot of, that doesn't mean you can't keep on improving your practice. So that's, I think, one thing. And then organizationally, I was first in line attorney, then Jeff Adashmi asked me to be the training director, then he asked me to be the felony manager, and now I'm the public defender, and there's no one else doing my job, so I can't go and turn to the other elected public defender in the state because there isn't one. So to me, it's just learning, also what it means to be elected and, navigating, at the same time I'm navigating, managing and being a leader in the office and working on individual cases. It's also managing the political dynamics. I want the DCCC, I'm an elected official. So a lot of people are also reaching out to me, there's endorsements, there's all that. So I think try to figure out also how to manage your time in light of all that. How much stuff should be managing, how much should be leading, how much should be working with the case. And that's something I'm always tinkering with and trying to figure out how best to manage my time.
It's well known that there are, we call them public dump trucks. These are public defenders who don't care really. My public defender was a public dump truck. I went through the process in 7 days. Basically, she assisted the district attorney in putting me in incarceration. And so, how have you changed that culture in the public defender's office from people who actually, because you guys don't get paid much, so we understand you guys are like a step above pro bono work. You do get paid, but there's a lot of attorneys who do pro bono work. And without that, we wouldn't have a system. So how have you changed the culture of San Francisco public defender's office to not be trucks?
Right. That's an excellent question. Sometimes they're called public pretenders instead of public defenders, right? And to me, I don't want any pretenders in my office. The work is just far too idle. And if you don't want to do it at a high level, you actually shouldn't be a public defender. You should go to someone else, like defend an insurance company or something like that. But you should not be a public defender unless you want and are driven to do it at a high level. So I always want to know where people's come from. It's like, why are you doing this work? And are you willing to put in the hours? There was a story that came out in the Atlantic about this young person who's doing a life sentence from Philadelphia, and it was just very clear with a higher level representation, you could have gotten a better result. Now, having said that, we don't control what gets filed. That's the prosecutor who files charges against their clients. We don't control whether they remain in jail or not while working the case. The judge makes that decision. We can file motions and ask and fight for them to be released, but we don't control that. The only thing we can control is can we represent our clients at the highest level. And I told clients, I don't care how much money you have, I'm going to provide better representation than any private attorney that you're going to get. And I want all of my clients feeling that way for the entire office, and I want people to aspire to that and to have that growth mindset, to always be thinking about how do you do this job at a higher level. So we sort of just proclaim that, and we let people know, and I try to say, look, what's your aim? Where do you want to be in 3 years? What kind of cases do you want to be working on? What kind of policies do you want to be impacting? And to me, it's a calling, and if you can't do the work that the calling deserves, you should actually leave the profession. If you can only do it for 2-3 years, that's fine, but then do it for 2-3 years. And there's a lot of people who did the work at a high level, and now they're allies doing, policy work, or they're working as ledge aid for a politician, or they're a chief of staff for a supervisor. So they can do allied work, and that's beneficial. But if you're going to stay in the public defender's office, you need to figure out how to bring your A game.
Yeah, a lot of them move on to nonprofits and help nonprofits get established. So when I was incarcerated, Melvin and Myers, right here in Embarcadero too, they dedicated millions of dollars in resources to help me, and a decade plus had passed by. And so I was like, dang, this is an international law firm, but they can't do anything. But I found that in my mind, I said, let me help them help me. And so I went to the law library and I studied to see how I got here. Because if I figure out how I got here, maybe I can go in the reverse and get out. Not everybody has that argument. Nobody, the law scared me, but it was desperate times called for desperate measures. And in saying that, I taught my attorney how to fight. I knew the board of parole hearings, I knew the system, she knew the books, knowledge, and together we crafted that strategy that was very successful. But at the lower level, before we even get there, or at the beginning stages, if a person doesn't know how to represent themselves, and the attorney's in there representing them at a lower level, what is the process for somebody to notify your office saying, you know what, I think this person is not getting the result? Do you have a system for that?
Yeah, we do have a system where whenever someone gets a court slip, they also get a slip with who the managers are, so they can always reach out to a manager. And a lot of people, I know a lot of community people don't call me directly, and I'll always go back and look into the case and check in with whoever's representing that individual. But I want to touch on what you first said, which is that I'll often tell my clients, listen, you're my chief investigator. Like, you are really a thought partner in this case, and I've oftentimes leaned on a client for an instinct about, should we keep this juror on or not? What do you think? Because we have preemptory challenges. We're allowed to make choices about which jurors can be on and off. And I think it's really important that attorneys learn to tap into the expertise that their clients may have in a particular place instead of just having a top-down attitude towards it. And I think those attorneys who are willing to listen to their clients and clients' community members often get better results in court.
So, before we turn questions over to the residents of the community, I'm fighting very hard to get Larry Green out of prison. He's been in for 48 years. He's factually innocent. More evidence and people involved in the case have come forward. However, the court system has not been friendly to this because of the nature of the case, the notoriousness surrounding the case. But that doesn't mean the man isn't innocent. It just means he was caught up in a case that is hot. Is there anything that your office can do to assist people who are factually innocent in certain time out of San Francisco?
Well, we have a unit, it's on our Freedom Project, where we are working to undo convictions where someone has been sentenced improperly, or if the judge now has the ability to strike enhancements. But there's another level. There's appeals, there's writs of habeas corpus. There's all sorts of different ways, but I'll look at more to that case now, a lot on my plate. But that's something we're always looking to do, is figure any way. I was with Jacques Wilson, one of my heroes in the office, who supervises our misdemeanor unit. What we talk about is we can win before the trial, we can win during the trial, or we can win after the trial. So one of the things we try to do is leave no stone unturned. So if there's any way of bringing that forward in front of a judge and filing the appropriate motions, we will do that.
That's what's up. He's got my vote already, but is there any questions from the audience that he didn't cover that you guys would like to know about your next public?
Willie, did you want to ask something? Go ahead.
Yeah, how long have you been with the system here?
Oh, I've been in the San Francisco Public Defender's Office since 2008, and then I was in the Contra Costa Public Defender's Office prior to that. So I was a line attorney for a number of years in the Contra Costa Public Defenders. Then Jeff Adasha recruited me to San Francisco. I was a line attorney here. And then I was the director of training, then the manager of the felony unit. Then when he passed away, I was appointed and elected. A lot of people in the office wrote to the mayor asking her to appoint me as the public defender.
Okay. Well, first of all, I am so proud of San Francisco for having an elected public. He was just a game changer when, I think that happened under Jeff, didn't it?
No, it's been elected for a number of years, but
Oh,
Jeff
really?
Jeff sort of ushered the office into a new, made the office substantially better than it had
Oh,
been
yeah,
before.
well,
It didn't have a great reputation before.
And the point I was going to make is that he was so popular with the people. I mean, the Third and Blue, all he had to do was show up and there'd be a crowd of people around him. And so we all loved him and he loved us. And you could tell, I mean, he really did. It's hard to say of any elected official that they love the people on Bayview Point. And, that gave him the power to demand the money that the office needed. The reason that there are public pretenders is because they're not paid anything and they're overwhelmed with work and they can't possibly do it well, and so they get numb to it and almost give up trying. And you know, you can understand that. I mean, I've talked to the people in Louisiana, for example, and my God, they've got 150 cases, and every one of them has got something desperate going on in it, and they just can't do it. So that's a wonderful thing, and Jeff was able to expand the concept of public defender far beyond just court work. One of the things that happens to me every day is I get a lot of calls from prisoners, and they often complain about the representation that they had, especially if they're just newly incarcerated. And some of them are from San Francisco. And so I asked them, are you represented by the Public Defender's Office? A couple of days ago, somebody called and said, I fired my public defender, and then they appointed an attorney for me, and I fired him too. I said, why did you fire your public attorney? He couldn't even come up with a good reason. What can I say about the difference between the San Francisco Public Defender's Office and what he's heard of?
Right.
What's a good way to explain that?
Well, that's a good, I mean, first of all, it's very important for us to earn that trust. Like however good we are, and I think we are the best public defender's office in the country, every day you have to maintain that, and I think what's vital is maintaining that trust. So the first thing we require is if anyone's in custody, they get a visit within 48 hours of the arraignment, which is the initial appearance on the case. And hopefully they've also had a visit prior to the arraignment from our pre-trial release unit, which is collecting information, beginning the investigation, hopefully reaching out to family members to ease the anxiety. So they should have done 2 visits. But it's very important that we, and people want to see a confident public defender. So it's really important that we get in there and really show them, oftentimes the police reports can be biased for a whole variety of reasons, and to show them there's going to be another side to it. There's going to be motions that are filed. There's going to be investigations done. Right now, and also with the pandemic, obviously some of that hasn't been as easy as it has been before, but another issue we're dealing with right now is the courts have been steamrolling our clients' speedy trial rights. So normally we can say, listen, don't take this offer, you will have your trial on this date, and trust me, I'm going to be prepared on that date. Now we don't have that assurity of the date because of COVID, the court took advantage of it, extended cases, but unlike a lot of other counties, they haven't gotten back on track in terms of moving cases in the way they should have. So that's making right now a more challenging time before, which is all the more reason we have to perform at an even higher level. But I think it's more to say, ask questions of your attorney, because every person we represent should be doing that. And there's things that aren't happening, just ask us, and hopefully we should be providing explanations. And another thing that we really encourage our attorneys to do on the first visit is talk about something besides the actual case. Because the reality is, where did you go to high school? Where did they go to high school? What's her favorite kind of music? Tell me about your godmother. Something about that to show that you have an interest, but you should, in more than just the 4 corners of this police report, because that is going to actually impact. Knowing find a better way is going to impact how you relate to them, and that I find surprising how many times they don't even leave. They'll actually connect back to the case in the way that you don't fully understand.
I have a question. What was that particular legal document that was just served? Who was it served to? The protest that you did at 850 Bryant? What was that legal document?
Yeah, there were some motions that we were filing to dismiss the cases that had been delayed past their legal deadline.
Or what was the term of that legal document that you served?
It was a section of the motion to dismiss.
It's a motion, they call it the crispiers.
Yeah.
And are you
It was a
What is
motion,
the term?
it's a section of the penal code called 1382, but it was a 82, yeah.
And was it served to the judges? Who was
Yeah,
it
it was,
served to?
yes, it was filed to the judges to dismiss the case, yes.
Oh, so was this a particular judge?
There were different ones for different, yeah,
Different
cases.
ones. What department in 850 Bryan did you serve these different judges?
It happens to be Department 22 is the master calendar, so that's where a lot of them are filed.
I see.
You know, I wanted to not just sick because a community mother of 2 black sons. So a lot of your out of the box thinking, you kind of check all the boxes for me, and that's why I'm a strong supporter of yours, because I see the vision of that, and a lot of things. I remember my family's house on the state. I remember hearing the avalanches and being on hyper alert. It's almost like having a diagnosis of community PTSD, right? Especially when you have these sons. My kids were good kids. However, I know that because of that gang injunction, they could be going to the corner store and get swooped up with everybody else, and then next thing you know, they're affiliated. And when you get stopped by a police officer, even though you're a good kid and you're working or you're going to school like you're supposed to, and you're a child of color, especially our black males, they're presumed guilty if they can afford to proper representation, right? So what you said about the public pretender, and all that kind of stuff, and what you are doing is different. I really commend that, because unfortunately, most low-income residents cannot afford proper representation, and if they could have, there's a lot of different small infractions that they would have walked on that wouldn't have led up to actually getting locked up for a significant time for taking the walk. You know, if you plead guilty to this, even though you did not do this, you'll get to go home today. Which, you know, I see that happen on small scales, where that interaction happened over a period of time for stuff that was not really that serious, but because they had that repeat, when something really prevalent happened, it's like it's assumed to be guilty because we have you on paper, you know, and for doing these things that, so you know, I don't know if you committed this crime, but you're guilty of something, right? Other words, right? But we gonna do our due diligence to find out what that is, you know. And I'm saying that to say that I'm glad that you are taking the initiative to make sure that people are paid to have representation from the African American community to actually start being on those juries, because we don't have people that look like us and from our experience that are sitting on those juries, we're going to get these negative outcomes. Now, I also have another side to the way that I process stuff. I do believe that there are people that do belong in jail and need to be there for significant crime. But here's the thing. I also do believe in our men coming home and doing their time, and actually when they are doing those long stretches, they're coming home to a whole another different universe. The people that they grew up with, the people they identify as family, everything, the world has changed. Modern technology and everything. It's like asking them to revisit and not succeed going back to prison, right? And I'm trying to become institutionalized. You know, there are some golden brothers that are sitting up in those institutions that don't need to be in those jailhouses, and we need people to fight for them and bring them home. But we also have to be a welcoming community to provide space for them, to give them the opportunity to grow. They cannot function if they're locked out of employment, or they're only stationed toward a certain kind of employment. You know what I'm saying? They might say, hey, ban the box, but they'll write their history. So, you know, it's just to making it easier for our folks. And you know, in some cases, you know, we all been touched by people that have been incarcerated. We also been touched by people that have been the betrayers of violence, and also the ones that have been affected, that, you know, by inner city violence. That's for lack of better words. You know, I don't want to give any fire to anything for people to think view our community in such a way. It's a lack of resources. You know, lack of resources and lack of upward mobility that keeps our people institutionalized, and you know, and kind of strapped to the concrete without upward mobility. So bringing representation here is important. Having representation in court and having somebody that'll actually defend you in court in a real way is extremely important. Important to keep down some of our people that have been put there just because. You know, to keep the numbers in. California has more prison institutions, you know, than I mean, come on, it's a business, right? It's a business of black bodies, black and brown bodies. But when we look around and we ask, where have all our children gone? We have a nation within a nation that's locked up in institutions, you know what I'm saying? That have no faith in the system, and the parents are broken because they don't have faith in the system either. I wish there was a way to develop the relationship between those that enforce the law and those that are victimized by the law. You know, what I have noticed, which is something to put on your radar, is that when it comes to black women that are staying in low-income housing, we don't report rape. We don't report when we've been physically assaulted or none of that, because if we do have the interaction, and I'm saying this from personal experience, when you have the police to come out to our communities and to engage with us, what happens is that you come victimized twice. For the officer to come to do the intervention between you and the betrayer of violence, that officer is talking to you like you got a tail between your legs. So there's so many different layers, but I'm glad to see that you are taking initiative to actually say, hey, if you cannot work, a lot of us won't take off work and go and sit in a jury that we probably need to be there at, you know, because we know that who's a gang member and who's affiliated and all that other stuff. We can't get crime solved in our own community because we don't trust the system, and there is no witness protection program for people to stay in low-income housing. Period. Right?
I would like to address something that you said, just because it's important. Many people who go in for long-term offenders, right, not the short ones in and out, the revolving door, that needs to be fixed. But those who serve at least 10 years or better or have a life sentence, they are required to be their own psychologists, their own professors, their own addiction counselors, so on and forth. To get out through the parole board, you have to pass many tests. And so it's not a matter of them becoming institutionalized, it's a matter of them becoming so complete in their character, right? When they get out, they're ready to come out and do work to heal the community because they've already done it for themselves. So those are the ones we want to help get out. And so we need to really sign up for the San Francisco Reentry Council and press the district attorney who leads it, the adult probation department who has now made it their personal ad space. We need to talk to San Francisco Parole Division, who does nothing to help our reentry council, and to get those funds into the hands of more of the public defender's office, nonprofit organizations who are creating reentry housing programs, so that we can be a part of that. So we're working on that. I know he's working on that.
You make me want to hire you right now. You kind
No, he's already hired.
Yeah, you kind of remind me. You got a little bit of Naeem in you. Somebody will explain to you what that means. My father worked with reentry and ex-offenders, and he's been arbitrary creator of a couple of different programs. You know, so and I've worked with that population as well.
And I want to also say too that when a guy goes up before the parole board, I can't remember the name of the meeting, but community can show up. Community can show up the in-bank hearings, right? Community show up, but often it's just an attorney who's overworked, brings a few letters of support, But if we showed up and said, we want that person out, we know who he is, he's been writing us, we've been keeping an eye on what he's in, and we want him out, they would have to let him out. But they don't have that type of pressure.
We should put a calendar in the paper.
We will.
Let me touch on a couple.
Yeah, no, please.
Okay,
please,
a couple
sorry.
points. First of all, Arian Harrison is one of the heroes or sheroes of our community in terms of just the work. Because the reality is we're trying to do a lot of these things, solve issues in 850 Bryant. They're really educational inequity issues. They're environmental justice issues. They're housing issues. They're employment opportunity issues, right? And to me, you're just, such an inspiration because of all the amazing work you've done in Bayview, Hunter's Point around environmental racism. But you touched on a couple other things there, which is that, in part, there are false, wrongful convictions happening every single day in courts all across the country. And they're happening for a few reasons. One is over-policing, but two is because of pretrial detention. So a lot of people feel like, I'm going to plead to something just to get out. The other is overcharging, which the same thing can be charged. There could be one incident that can be handled 3 different ways. It could be call both of the parents and have them wrap it up, or it could be a misdemeanor, or it could be 2 strikes. And I've literally seen all those scenarios, literally the same set of facts. But also, a lot of people are saying, listen, I want to fight this kid. But when they look out and say, I can't get a jury of their peers, they're like, I'm not going to take this. I don't have the faith in the system, so I'm just going to plead guilty to avoid a greater consequence. And the other thing is, they're also afraid because the judges and the prosecutors will often insinuate, we're going to really hammer you if you get convicted, so you better take this deal. So you have pretrial detention, overcharging, and trial tax. Those 3 evils of the system lead to a lot of wrongful things, and it's often just by plea. So you're not going to necessarily read the story years later when the jury and we found the DNA. So there's a lot more people. So we need the community members coming home because it's a human rights issue, but also because so many people, like my friend William here, have so much wisdom to give to the community, give so much, but that wisdom is not harnessed in the way it should be for our society.
Exactly.
People
That's what I meant about brothers just like yourself.
Right.
When they do, for lack of words, maybe I didn't express it the correct way, but I'm going to express it to you now. Yes, we look forward to brothers that come home that have taken the initiative to educate themselves and gone wiser because of that, because I think that linking you back to the community and providing a platform for you to do the right thing. It's one thing to say, I want to do this, but it's another thing to have support around that to actually see it come into fruition. I believe that there's a lot of, this is so much talent, is ridiculous. Yes, we are magical people. I'm gonna say that. We magical. We make it look glamour-like, but we need to create platforms for that to happen. And I look forward to supporting those that want to actively engage and change the community and the dynamics. And it's not no greater representative to somebody that's actually been there and done that. I'll go on to the next question. So thank you.
I'm thinking that those lights went out because we might be done, and so I have a little bit more access to you. So if anybody else had a question.
Linda Parker Pennington, I'm sorry I'm late. I'm glad I'm here. I wish more people were here. I wish I had a better understanding of your role, but my question is, and you already have my vote, so but the question is, so 5 years from now, when you have hit all the goals and done the job, and exceeded expectations, what is the cover story on the SF Bayview News about your accomplishments and how that's changed this city?
Well, that's a heavy question. Let me say that one thing I'm really committed to is how much we can accomplish. Part of our mission is to vigorously defend, fight state-sponsored violence, and promote community power, right? And what I wanted the headline to say is how effectively we've done all those things. Now, how you do that, because public defenders, I guess I would like to say something like this. This is what an offensive public defender office can look like. Because the reality is we have to play defense a lot, and that's our constitutional mandate. But we represent 25,000 of the most vulnerable people in our community every single year. So we really need to be at the table. There's an elected sheriff and an elected district attorney in the ear of all of the legislators in California. There's only one of them, the public defender. But fortunately, what I'm trying to do is be very intentional about how we run the office. So I actually did a strategic planning process, and we put some things into place. So I had about 33 organizations sign on to my budget as community-based organizations because I brought in Listen Lacoste, who's just a fantastic, skilled manager who's the executive director of our Reimagining program to be my chief of staff because it's like we should be more of a community law office. So what I'd like to see is to show really what, we talk about the progressive prosecutor movement. Right now, I want the headline to be, this is what the daring defender movement looks like. And we've been underutilizing a really vital resource in our communities for a long time that we have in a lot of places, and that's public defender offices. Because realize people come to a public defender office because they're mission driven. As we were talking about earlier, you shouldn't come if it's not a call. You actually should go do something else because the work is too vital and it has generational impact. So what I would love to do is to change the narrative and have people say, wow, public defenders can do a lot for public safety, and educate people to realize why vigorous defense actually leads to more public safety. Because when you truly see someone and fight for someone, that in and of itself is going to be a springboard for that person moving their life in a more positive direction. But when someone gets convicted of something they shouldn't, well, now they're on probation or parole or locked up for longer and they can't support their family. And that has that ripple effect. Now, the nephew who can't afford the iPhone may take it out of someone's purse, right? So it has an impact wider than we think it is. So I want to sort of be part of an office that's changing the narrative on what public defender potential truly is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll get a headline for that.
We have a little bit of time left. Is there any more questions that we need to ask?
I would like to know, was this meeting, was it advertised about this meeting? Was it introduced to the community?
It
As far
was.
as the president, it was.
It was on short notice. We kind of like got it together on short notice. And we wish in the future to make sure that we have posters and well advertised announcements of what the San Francisco Bayview will hold town hall meeting. So thank you for that question.
No, the reason I just spoke, what I wanted to introduce, because even if so, if it was acknowledged, I personally think that within the communities that the people absolutely have no more faith in the political system. And I just wanted to, all the questions, everything that was spoken, it's always done so well. But at the end of the day, when it's about production and results, it really never happens for the disenfranchised community. I'm not aware of your story and who you are. I don't know if you knew, but I've been doing this work for almost over 30-something odd years here in San Francisco and over 20 here in Bayview. And it's the same old story, And myself, I'm taking a stand. My son was murdered. San Francisco quadruple homicide. Yalani Chinyama Rende, the 19-year-old who was simply just trying to cash his check on his half-an-hour lunch break at Benihana's Japanese restaurant in January 9, 2015. And it has been an arrest a year and a half after he was murdered in now presently Mayor London Breed's district when she was the district attorney, Board of Supervisors in District 5. And that was January the 9th, 2015, and still today we have not received the trial date. And it would be 8 years, January the 9th, 2023. We're still waiting for a trial date. Yet, Katie Steiner, a Caucasian woman, was murdered at the wharf July 1st, 2015, 6 months after the murder of my son. Her case had been tried. Jeff Adachi, good friend of mine. So it's like, no matter what we do and what we say, we are not getting justice in this city, and we're not getting justice in this country. You hear of the family, she spoke of the women being raped, etc. No one is dealing with the majority of these African American women. Child is being murdered on a daily. No one is dealing about the mental health, what our needs are. It is nothing in place in San Francisco to deal with the mental issues of the black mothers and the suffrage. What do? Do we continue to hear and have them come here and express the same old story over and over? And I feel your sincerity. There's a time that must arrive where we have to also take responsibilities as citizens, as law-abiding citizens. According to the United States Constitution, it says that if the government is not working for the people, it is our duty and our obligation, one, to alter, or two, to abolish. That is our duty. That is our duty. Continuing telling us that this is what you're getting ready to do, and it never happens. And we are dying off. We're dying. She said, broken. She's been working, her mother, Marie Harris, her father, they are the fighters in this community. She's a product. I'm a product. You're here at this, you're staff. Where's the community? They're dying and they don't have the strength. You understand? With that said, as I'm taking a stand, January the 9th, 2015, I'm holding the city and county, City Hall under the citizen's arrest. We are wrapping yellow crime tape around City Hall. What happened in Los Angeles with the 4 Council of the Latino community? We know what goes on behind the scenes. They just admitted that they was massaging for the Latino district. They called the little black baby a bouncing monkey. You understand what I'm saying? You understand? These boys is crying out. They don't have nowhere to go. These boys have no housing. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Where are they going to go? We so quick to do a press conference by saying an Asian has been attacked. 50 million self-hate from the Asian community they got. 50 million. And we haven't gotten reparations. Every one of those Asians that was murdered in San Francisco or attacked in any way, they are now attached to that 50 million. You go on and you will look at every one of their names. It wasn't 1,000 names, it's not 2,000, it's not 3,000, it's not 4,000, 5,000. Of all these black children murdered, and you're not even talking about community. But the ones, 20, 30, that the Asians, they made a statement when they got that 50 million. They said it is now resolved in the United States Constitution that every one of these names will be spoken for the rest of their lives of this eternity. Who have taken a stand for us? Who's speaking for us? You understand what I'm saying? So I needed to put that at the table. I'm requesting that when they did the movie Vendetta in Europe, he requested that everyone wear a V mask. I'm requesting the same. That anyone who wants to participate in the abolishing of City Hall and the evil to bring your V mask. See, they thought that I was going to come after 8 years with a candle. No, I'm coming to abolish. Martin Luther King said, I'm putting my people into a burning house. But right now, the house is burning down. And I would rather do it this way in memory of my son, Prince Yamani Yemas Chinyamarende. I would rather do it this way than to do it another. And I'm going to say words to the wise is sufficient, because the mind cannot conceive what we go through as black mothers with our children being murdered. You can't conceive. You see, I don't run to no pills to cover it up and numb it as what you say about me. I don't go to no pills. I don't smoke no marijuana. I don't do any of those things. I have to digest this every single day and go to court every other week. Gosson, Boudin, and And now, Mrs. Brooks, I have met with all 3 district attorneys private and nothing has been done. You understand what I'm saying? So it's no more talking. It's time for a citizen arrest for us to take our position and abolish. And that's the way I'm coming. I'm not coming with no smiles on my face, pretending, trying to make no friends when every time someone come in new and take their position. I'm not here. I'm not here to do any of that with any of you.
Sister Queen, we feel your pain.
And I'm just letting it be said. I don't even want to feel my pain.
No,
because
we
I
feel
feel
your pain
mine.
as a community.
I don't want nobody to feel my pain. But what I'm saying, I just wanted to come here to hear you and to let it be known of what we need to do, because I knew the people that was in this room cared enough. I knew that they cared enough to be here. But the community is not here.
Well, we just started. I just got the job. So
Did you? What is your position? I didn't hear
I'm the
it.
editor-in-chief of the San Francisco Bayview Black National newspaper.
Oh, well, I'm happy for your position. And I'm glad I'm meeting you just as well. Because Mary Ratcliffe and Willie, they wrote an article concerning who my son was. Maybe you should look it up. They was one of the ones to do a great article. I stayed with them, didn't I? For a long time concerning my
My condolences to
son.
your loss, but we do have to wrap it up. And
Oh.
we'd love to continue this conversation later, for sure. I want to thank the community that did come out, the staff of San Francisco Bayview newspaper, Black National newspaper. I want to thank Mano for coming out, and I want to thank the Opera House, also known as the Ruth Williams Memorial Theater, for giving us this space to have this town hall business meeting. And it's about business. It's about taking care of business.
Yes,
It's not about
yes.
talk. And
Yes.
I hope that you give us, under this new direction, time to show that we about business. We're not about talk.
Yes.
So thank you.
Well, I can look at your character and tell you about business. I heard my sister speak, and you spoke well, and I felt your sincerity, and you lived it. And I think that those who live it, I heard what you said concerning the hill in your village. You brought up the hill, so you must know something about the hill. I'm dealing with the arsons. I'm not just fighting for my son. I've been fighting on my ammunition before the murder of my son. I'm also up there at the hill concerning the arson that took place. I don't know if you're aware of that. The 3 fires. I'm the one brought the attention to that. I've been fighting for this community before my son was murdered. So this is not just about my son. I want you to have an understanding. This is about my people, my nation, and society. And I'm born for this purpose just as well.
I as well. I was born for this too.
And I feel you. I really do.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm
for
looking so
coming.
forward to
Thank
us
you for
doing
speaking.
great things together.
For sure.
And I must now retire.
All right, that's San Francisco Bayview.
A lot of heart and courage and spirit in this room, I tell you. Yes. Yes. We need to fuse it together.
What's your name?